Robert Mondavi vowed to make a great wine for every American table. And that's exactly what he did. His spirit lives on in every bottle of Woodbridge by Robert Mondavi, from one for all.
Welcome to the second part of our second panel discussion on how COVID-19 has affected and in many ways completely transformed America's food service industry. I'm Michael Ambrosino for Latin Biz Today. Joining me for this conversation are Chef Carlos Gaytán, the celebrated chef and creator of the acclaimed Mexique and Suco restaurants, who was awarded Chef of the Year by the American Culinary Federation in 2011 and was the first chef of Mexican descent to receive a Michelin star in 2013 and then again in 2014. Also Danny Meyer, the founder and CEO of the Union Square Hospitality Group, a family of successful businesses including Gramercy Tavern, Porchlight, Tacocina, and the much-beloved Shake Shack brand. To date, Union Square is responsible for 28 James Beards Awards and 3 Michelin stars. And finally, Tracy, the partner and CMO overseeing public relations, communications, promotion, advertising, and charitable events for the Myriad Restaurant Group that includes notable restaurants Tribeca Grill, Batard, Nobu 57, and the Porsche Grill. Welcome to the second part of our series of conversations about COVID-19 and how this global pandemic has affected and in many ways transformed the country's food service industry, its fine dining experiences, and overall food culture. As we dive back into the topic, we're going to get into how is the food service industry evolving? And Danny, I was really curious, in 2006, you had an influential book that you wrote called Setting the Table, The Transformative Power of Hospitality and Business. And I was just curious, moving forward, how do you see this specific power evolving?
I'm so sorry. How do I see which evolving? The specific?
The transformative power of hospitality. I mean, if COVID is changing what you can do, I read parts of the book and clearly I saw the stream that shows what the power of hospitality is. But given COVID, how do you see this power evolving over time with COVID in the rearview mirror?
Well, I think COVID has accelerated every single thing that was already moving. So if forever, I would say human beings have craved both providing and receiving hospitality. It's kind of like a hug. When you give one, you get one back. And I believe that this, whether you call it social distancing or forced distancing, that has led to isolation and loneliness for so many people. They haven't had the social interactions in many cases of going to their office. They haven't been able to hug their moms and dads and grandchildren and all that kind of thing. Has led people to craving that hug all the more, like not less, but more. And the constraints are that people have learned to touch less. They've learned how contact that used to be something that you craved is now deemed to be dangerous. And I do believe that, there are some things in our industry that are going to stick. I think that people don't necessarily want to give their credit card to somebody to hold and take to a machine and bring back. And so, I think things like Apple Pay or contact-free payments or using QSR codes for menus or QSR codes to pay, all kinds of things like that are going to stick around. But the thing that's going to be guiding all those things is going to be that even as we get more tech, we're going to crave more touch.
Right.
And I just do not believe anything more deeply than that the sense of welcome and the sense of welcome home that we give people is going to be absolutely crucial. The last thing I'll say is this. I've always believed that the best restaurants blur the lines between going out and coming home. You want to give people a sense that they went out, but you also want to give them a sense that they're home. And I think that if anything right now, the need for that, both sides of that equation are higher than ever. I don't think people right now are going to be craving as many of the, the gimmicks about fine dining. I don't think they're going to want an 18-course meal that challenges their mind. I think they're going to want the hug of better home-cooked food than you ever thought was possible. They want something that hugs them, even though they're going out.
Carlos, there was a recent New York Times article that said that COVID is causing such great unemployment and shifts in what people do professionally that for a lot of people, their hobbies were being turned into their new careers. And a large percentage of those careers are within some aspect of the food service sector. So all of a sudden, what you were saying, Danny, what you do at home all of a sudden becomes something that you now can do as a career. Are you seeing areas in food culture that are rebounding and thriving during the pandemic in terms of people's sense of invention and bringing food culture to their homes, or taking whatever exists in their homes and taking it to the marketplace?
You know what? I noticed a lot that in my case, I had so many people asking me, when I post something that I create, like just I did a question in my stories and Instagram about some ingredients, and I have, I don't know, 500 questions that I had from people, they follow me, like, where did you get those ingredients? People start telling me stories about those ingredients, I haven't read everything yet, but the most that I read, it was like telling me stories about their home, and so I believe, that people are ready to, I mean, that's exactly why he was telling, like people want to feel home. People that really want to relate now, the things that if people from other countries, they just want to think about, those moments that they have the experience with their parents, with their family and other, in other countries. And people is getting to cooking like nobody else before, like, and it's amazing just to see that, obviously it might hurt a little bit the business, but it's good. People, it's want to feel home. They want to feel protected, and they do an amazing job. So that's what I think.
Tracy, I have never seen such a large scale change in the food economy that COVID has promoted. The dramatic shifts towards online food delivery systems, everything from groceries to takeout to now meal kits and even virtual dining. Do you consider these good trends? Do they disturb you? What do you think?
Well, I think necessity is the mother of invention. And because of what's been happening this year, because we were kind of pushed out of the game, other types of food delivery and food providers, et cetera, filled the void. I don't think they're a bad thing. I think for now, it's good for people to have more options and to get a decent quality in their home. But I do feel that the hospitality hug is very important. And, we're used to being a little bit isolated now for this last year. But I think once we get out and about again, we start experiencing the excitement of being out and about, and the vitality of it. In New York City in particular, people live on top of each other. They pay a lot of money to live there. The cost of living is high. There's a lot of aggravation. But the reason that you want to stay is because you have great dining, because you have wonderful museums, because you have terrific theater, you have great sporting events. You have all these things that are attractive and that are really the key to having a well-balanced and happy life, and things that you can share with your family and your friends. So we have to get those things back. I think for right now, for the food industry, it's nice that you can get some prepared foods and you can bring them home and have them. And I think that's been good. I'm not a particularly good chef, so I need things that have some things already prepared, and then I can add my own touches. I feel like I'm doing something special if I slice some tomatoes and throw them in there into a chowder, or some peppers or something. I feel like I've done my part. But I have to admit, places like Stu Leonard's, it's great, that they have some prepared foods, and I can buy lobster meat and stuff and do creative things with it. But it doesn't replace what we do. And I think that once we're back in the game, I hope that people realize that there's a reason why they missed us, that these other things are good. It's good to have them, but it's not something that should necessarily replace what we do.
Right. Danny, when I was doing some research about you and the Union Square Group, I was fascinated about your really important association with Rethink and their certification process. And their mission statement is food insecurity is widespread and escalating. It's time to think about how food is produced and consumed. And I thought that's fascinating. I mean, what an amazing group to be associated with. And I was curious, have you helped them or they helped you expand on this idea when it comes to what you do for food culture and the business of food service that relates to food insecurity?
It's been another example of a hug where we've given one and gotten one back. So what Rethink has done for us and for many, many other restaurants, not just in New York, is to provide the opportunity when we could not be in our normal type of business of serving guests in our restaurants, and we had laid off lots and lots of people from our team. Rethink gave us the opportunity to hire many of them back to be able to buy food that they could cook and then have that food served to underserved neighborhoods in the South Bronx. It also gave us the chance to partner with 3 sister restaurants in the South Bronx where we could share with those restaurateurs some of the things we were learning about how to pivot and create some revenue, even in a virtually no revenue state that we were in for the first several months. And Rethink was able to do that because they had corporate funding, but they also had the know-how to bring this all together. So that was a win-win-win. We got to hire people back. We got to do some business with our suppliers. We got to let the people who worked for us feel good about a hard day's work, knowing that the food that they were cooking was going to be appreciated in a neighborhood where there was a great deal of hunger. So we got a lot out of this, and what we've been able to give in turn has been, I hope, the kind of platform for Rethink to showcase what they can do. And we've also led Rethink to some additional funding sources, which has been a really strong thing. It's a fantastic organization, and it's complementary to many of the other organizations we've been involved with, whether it's City Harvest or Share Our Strength, No Kid Hungry, God's Love We Deliver. There's no one organization that knows how to do it all, but every little bit helps, and it helps human dignity and it helps human health.
Mm-hmm. Carlos, I'm going to give you a chance to be metaphysical now, because reading so much about your career and history, if I was to kind of put a label on your aesthetic with food, I would say personal journey. Being an immigrant coming into the country, your journey through all of the discrimination and the hurdles of this world, going back to Mexico, and your own personal journeys to basically bring back the evocative cuisines that you grew up with. And so I'm curious, what has COVID taught you about the future journey for food culture?
Oh, Lord. It's been, I think I'm learning so much about it. Like right now, probably it's just, I'm planning to do a trip next month, and I'm planning to come see my parents. I haven't seen my parents in a long time. And then COVID is, because of COVID, it stopped me for traveling. I barely go to the other restaurant in Mexico. But you know what? During this whole entire time, I prepare myself to learn more about my culture and bring more items, more knowledge. I feel like as part of my culture, educate people in the United States or in other countries about what Mexico is right now. I found out that when you talk about Mexico, always you hear a lot of bad things about Mexico, but it feels that I learned that cuisine or food, it creates a bridge between one country to the other one. So it got me that, and it got me really excited, to showcase who we are in Mexico through our cuisine, through our talents. So I get the opportunity to bring some chefs from Mexico. I work on their pizzas. We have no people that want to work here in the United States because they want to stay home safe, and that's fine. But it was a lot of kids that want to come to the United States. And they have great talents. And for me to showcase all the talents is very important. So and very soon you're gonna see, a lot of changes that I'm gonna be doing, a lot of things that it gets involved with my culture. when you become, obviously, when you become kind of role model for them, not just by cooking, not just by teaching how to do things, but actually get involved with things. Here, one of the things that I get a chance to do, I partner with, other companies like Cisco, and they donate huge trucks of food, so we create food for people. And I mean, and one day we did about 2,000 people that we were just giving food prepared by ourselves, by our staff. So it was nice. There's a lot of things that we're gonna get involved, and a lot of things that we did in the past, and a lot of things that are coming.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Very, very, kind of a strange question. Thank you very much for that answer. So, the last topic that I wanted to explore with you all is innovation and the reinvention of food and food service, in 2021 moving forward. And Danny, starting with you, first, there's this concept of ghost kitchens. So you have a kitchen that does not have a actual bricks and mortar restaurant. It exists virtually online. Now we have something called ghost franchises. An example of that is a company called Virtual Dining Concepts, and one of their brands is called Mr. Beast Burger. And so they're using existing infrastructure, in this case, restaurants that are closed or really suffering because of COVID, to expand this virtual brand. So all of a sudden, Mr. Beast Burger is opening up 300 new locations nationwide in the next 1 to 3 months. A very different kind of trajectory than you might have experienced when you started Shake Shack. So I'm curious, some see this as a boon for independent restaurants, especially in a time like COVID. Others see this as further disruption to an already fragmented industry. And I was curious what your take was.
Well, I'll start with the first part of it, ghost kitchens, which is kind of a fancy word for commissary. Restaurants have had commissaries, or restaurant chains have had commissaries forever. I think that what COVID has done is to turn all restaurant kitchens, certainly not all, but it doesn't sound like Carlos's, but many restaurant kitchens have become ghost kitchens because very few of them are cooking to their capacity. And then that leads to the second part, which is the virtual restaurant, which, water finds its cracks, nature abhors a vacuum. And if there's excess capacity in kitchens, coupled with the magnificent power of social media, you can absolutely see where, instead of a bricks and mortar brand expanding by virtue of using a ghost kitchen, you can imagine where a virtual brand could expand by virtue of using pre-existing excess capacity in bricks and mortar kitchens. And so is it disruptive? Not really. I think it's quite natural. People want to eat, and it's a great way to fill a void of people who had to do most of their eating at home, and now they have more choices. And, as I think we all know, the triumvirate of hamburgers, pizza, and fried chicken, plus maybe barbecue, has been king or queen during the pandemic. People want the hug of food they know, done better than they knew it could be. And they're going to these delivery apps and these aggregators. And since you can't go to the restaurant during a pandemic anyway, what you're doing is going to a marketplace and a name with reviews that can deliver a product that you want to eat within a short amount of time. Makes sense. Now, question I would have is, when we're all free to go back to restaurants, and let's just not forget, restaurants exist for a lot of reasons. It's not just because I don't feel like shopping and cooking and doing the dishes. A big part of it is I want to go out. I want someone to take care of me. I want to see people socially. I want the spontaneity of smelling and hearing and feeling and tasting. And maybe I'll just run into someone who I haven't seen for a long time. That doesn't happen on a Zoom call. That doesn't happen when you take food in. And so I get why we had ghost kitchens. I get why we now have virtual brands, but I also believe that when we are unshackled from the restrictions that we have all felt, that there's something about going to a real restaurant where someone looks you in the eye and smiles and recognizes you and welcomes you back, and the food that is on your plate came from a cook or a chef who created it in that kitchen. There's something that just cannot be beat about that experience.
In my household, I am the person that creates that kind of meal. And the other day, I found myself cooking almost all day, making this weird hybrid Cajun Creole, but then it had this Latin undertones. I was using dried chipotles. And I stepped back and I was like, what are you doing? And I realized I miss the thrill of fine dining. I miss sitting down and having some magnificent chef say, look at my creation. Look how magnificent this is. Experience it and with all your senses. And I was trying to recreate that at home. And, by the way, the dish came out pretty well. Wife was very happy. Dogs were sitting at attention, the whole nine yards. And Tracy, I'm curious, when it comes to the Myriad Group and the work you've been doing with your associates and your professional partners, how do you keep them motivated? How do you make them recognize, there is a light at the end of the tunnel and we can still do good work even in a pandemic?
Well, Michael, as you know from The Godfather, there's that favorite and famous line, "This is the business we have chosen." And, this is what we do. This is what we do. This is what we enjoy doing. There's nothing better than being with your colleagues, doing great work as a team together. I often wonder, I look at we have these holiday parties for the staff in December, and everybody comes with their families and their kids, and we have a clown and we have a magician, and everybody's together. And I think this is what it's all about. I sometimes wonder, where did people find the time to have all these children? Because we work so hard and we work such long hours. But it's the camaraderie of working with everybody. It's the idea of, doing the kind of work that we really enjoy doing. I always thought that when I walked around at night and I looked in the windows of our restaurants and I saw that people were having a good time, and I thought, wow, they put their trust in us. It's kind of a sacred trust. They could go anywhere. There's many, many good choices in New York City. And on certain nights, they go to Danny's place. And on some nights, they come to our places. And then all the other places in between. And it's a wonderful thing. It's a carnival of wonderful sights and sounds and cuisines. And to be part of that and to have an ability to provide the context and the experience for people, it's a wonderful business to be in. Sometimes when we look at the aggravation we have to put up with and the margins and all those kind of things, it becomes daunting. But then you remember why you went into the business in the first place. It was to provide that hospitality hug. It was to provide that experience that you really enjoy having. When my brother Drew and I were kids, we would go out to restaurants a lot. Our parents would take us out, and we always liked to sit facing the action because we wanted to see what was going on. It was theatrical. It was wonderful. Just all the personalities, all the people going out to eat, the aromas and the different types of cuisines. In New York City, we have, you can travel the world without ever leaving the city limits because we have virtually every type of cuisine you could want. This year for Restaurant Week, we had a takeout restaurant week because we couldn't have the normal restaurant week that we've always had. But I'm hoping that perhaps for the summer, or maybe it won't be for the summer yet, but certainly for next winter, we can get back to normal and have the thing where people come out in large numbers to over 400 or 500 restaurants and really having a wonderful dining experience. And when it's not Restaurant Week, it's still a wonderful place. It's still a great value to be able to go out and have an experience that you really can't create anywhere else other than in the best restaurants that are out there.
One thing I've learned from this conversation, Danny, after we're done, if you don't trademark hospitality hug, you're missing out on something. We've already used it 5 times. Carlos, we're probably going to have you, before we get into final thoughts, one last question for you. I was really impressed with the documentary you were in 2017 called Lives with Flavors. And there was specifically one line that you said that just kind of took my breath away, which is, how can I change your life with a dish? And I thought that goes to the essence of not just cooking, but things like Chef's Table and the way that we have taken cooking to a different degree where it's so much intimate. And you often see where that's just the case, that someone can eat a meal and it will change their life. And I'm curious, is that still possible now? But even more personally, can you name some ways that the pandemic has changed your approach to that craft of cooking?
Oh yeah, it changed so much. I will tell you really quick one story that it changed my life. I have a lady that she had cancer, and she approached me one time, and she's like, you know what, Carlos, I have problems with my daughter, and I don't know what to do. And I was like, you know what, in my place, there's always magic happening. Bring your daughter, I cook for you and for your daughter, and hope everything gets together. So I cooked for her and her daughter, and when they left happy. This lady called me back like a week later, and she asked me for a favor. She's like, Chef, I'm in the hospital. Sick and tired about the food over here. Uh, can you cook for me? And I was like, wow. And it was my day off, but to me, it was like, this is a gift. This is something magical. So I was like, yes, please let me know where hospital so I can bring the food over. And she's like, but you know what? Let me tell you one thing. I just want to eat soup, chicken soup and rice. And it's one of the things that I don't have in my restaurant is chicken soup and rice. And I was like, oh my God, those things that I don't like it, that I'm not happy with. So I came to my restaurant. I get on my knees and pray to the Lord. I say, you know what? God, please help me. I want to make the best food ever. And it was just simply chicken soup and rice. When I tasted it, it was so good, so amazing. So I took this food to the lady, and it was one of the last meals that she had in life. And to me, it's like, what a wonderful thing, that someone know it's going to pass away. And the last thing that they want to do is try your food. That changed your life forever, and it changed the way that you cook. So every time there someone shows in my restaurant, my team knows already that we cooking for someone that we don't know if they have problems or they have something in their minds. But when they come here, we want them to forget everything from outside, everything, concentrate on flavors, concentrate why this chicken dish is so simple, but it's so tasty. And they still remember for the next 5, 10 years. And that's the key that we want to try to do all the time, cook with that passion, with purposes, that people want to have not just a meal, but the experience of their life.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. That's marvelous. We're down to any final thoughts. They can be personal, they can be professional, on basically where we are right now and where food service can go. Danny, any final thoughts?
I'll just share that I've really enjoyed this conversation, and as you heard Tracy say earlier, we do this because we love doing this. No one is in the restaurant business by accident. No one's in it because it's easy, but what is easy is when you can create those kind of moments you just heard Carlos describing, where even if it doesn't change your life, I'm pretty satisfied if the food is so good that it interrupts your conversation. It's the only interruption I think is valid in a restaurant. I don't like when servers interrupt you when you're talking with your guest, but I love it when the food is so damn good that whatever they're talking about, they go, excuse me, you have to try this. This is amazing. That's my favorite kind of interruption. And if you do those time and time again, and you remember people and you welcome people in a way that shows how happy you are to see them, they're going to go back out into the world feeling better, and they're going to treat the world better. And this is the chance we have to remind people of the real power of hospitality.
I totally agree with that. I think that what Danny and Carlos are both expressing is that we have a business that's transformative in many ways, that we have this ability to kind of bring people together and have a wonderful experience that they remember for many, many years. I always feel like when you think back on things that happened in your life, you often think back to things that happened at the dining table with your family and your friends and your colleagues, sitting together, sharing stories, sharing good food. And those things are indelible. You know, things go on every day and there's a million things that attract our attention. But I think a good meal is something that's very sustaining that you hold on to for a long time.
Yeah, totally agree. Danny, Tracy, I think you're big role models in our community. And basically, when we try to do up there the best that we can, we have so many people behind us looking what we do during these hard times. And when you do it the right way, it feels good because you know you're helping not just your employees and your businesses, but you teaching other countries, other restaurants out of the world, you know, like how to do things, how you handle everything. You know, I learned so much today about the things that you do and the things that you guys manage everything, and we'll appreciate it a lot.
Can't wait to come to Chicago.
Me too.
Please be my guest. It will be my honor.
Gentlemen, it was such a pleasure having the opportunity to speak to all of you. Best wishes moving forward. And I do want you to know, I personally appreciate all the hard work you've done to rebuild and reinvent food service, fine dining, and our unique food culture. Thank you so much for your time.
Robert Mondavi vowed to make a great wine for every American table. And that's exactly what he did. His spirit lives on in every bottle of Woodbridge by Robert Mondavi, from one for all.